How does the UDUF octagram affect the golden pair relationship? Which I will answer today on today's episode of the C.S. Joseph podcast. Welcome to the show. And yes, I'm C.S. Joseph, obviously. And let's just get right into it. UDUF stands for Unconscious Developed, Unconscious Focused. And this is one of the ways in which we express or explain octagram as a sub-variant of each of the 16 types. There are 4 total octagram variants of each of the 16 types. So you basically multiply 16 by 4. That's 32 times 2. That's 64 different variants of the 16 types, 64 different variants of nurture-impacted nature for humanity. And then obviously you would have to multiply that by 2 biological genders to get 128 total different combinations and variants. But what we're discussing today is unconscious developed, unconscious focused, which is one of the atypical expressions of a person's octagram. Octagram, similar to a Enneagram, is basically how we within the ego hacker community explain human nurture's impact directly on a person's nature. Nature being whatever type of the 16 that they are, as identified through the type grid. But the octagram of the UDUF, unconscious developed, unconscious focused, is basically identified and tracked through a tool called the Octagrid, which we haven't released yet, but we are going to be releasing that very soon. And by the way, another thing that we're releasing very soon is ego hacking by text. The link should likely be in the description below this video. If it's not, it'll be in other videos, or it will be available on our link tree. Just click our link tree, which is linktr.ee/CS Joseph, and it will be announced via email, our Facebook group, as well as our Discord, so that you guys can get your pre-orders in before it goes live at the end of this month. And trust me, you're going to want to get the pre-order because I believe that the regular price will be double that of the pre-order price. So definitely make sure you guys pre-order to get in on the Ego Hacking by Text course. You will learn how to type other people through just their text messages. You will also learn how to ego hack, hashtag social engineer them through text messages. It is a very fun course, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with all of you folks. That being said, let's get back to the question. So UDUF types are atypical, which means they are a bit rarer. Another atypical variant of the octagram is SDSF, which is subconscious developed, subconscious focused. And UDUF is like what we would have traditionally called super ego focus back in the day, even though there's really no such thing as super ego focus. It's just you're very, very close to your super ego when you're unconscious developed and unconscious focus at the same time. It just means you're just really, really digging your heels into your unconscious, and the super ego eventually starts, you end up start bleeding through to your superego as a result of the amount of investment that you have put into the unconscious side of your mind out of the 4 sides. And that usually happens as a result of human nurture. And human nurture basically ends up being defined through octagram, basically. And some people ask me, like, okay, Mr. C.S. Joseph, so why is it called octagram when it only has 4 different outputs? And it's because it has 8 different inputs, which are basically the temple wheels, which we're discussing right now in season 18, cognitive mechanics. If you want to watch season 18 and get up to date on the current information, go to csjoseph.life/members and become a journeyman member. You can log into the journeyman section at csjoseph.life/portal. And then you just get on the members portal, and then there you are. Go to season 18, get up to date on everything current. Or you could just wait for the season 18 episodes to be released to the public. There are over 2 years of episodes available right now in the members area. And but if you don't want to wait the 2 years for the current stuff, obviously get a membership, csjoseph.life/members. So UDUF people, they are a bit more mature. In fact, they're probably the most mature out of the 16 types. Their unconscious development comes from them focusing on their shadow pole. Shadow pole is an aspect of the temple wheels. Again, more on that in season 18. I'm not really going to go into shadow poles here, but if you want to learn more about that, check out season 18, Cognitive Mechanics. And then unconscious focus means that they are actually closer to their deadly sin instead of the living virtue. I am a UDUF ENTP, which means I am a malevolent envy, ENTP, malevolent envy, an ENTP full of malevolent envy, versus like if I was SDUF, I would be a fanatic envy, fanatical envy ENTP. So just to give you an idea of how UDUF kind of works, just a little bit in terms of the octagram, and you determine octagram or utilize octagram. There's a lot of different vectors, but the main vectors that are used is like, okay, living virtue, deadly sin, which one are you closest to? Or shadow pole, aspiration pole, which one are you closest to? And that determines your octagram output. But obviously there's a ton of other vectors that we utilize on the octagrid also to verify our conclusions to make sure it is accurate. However, one of the biggest problems with the octagram is that a lot of people have a really hard time determining their octagram on their own. It almost always takes a third-party approach. And also, octagram, you need to utilize it in such a way where you're looking at the various traits from a polarity perspective, positive, negative polarities, etc. But regardless, the octagrid, when it is released, will have all these different points. So atypicals, UDUF, is a really big thing, especially when it comes to one of the 8 sexual compatibilities, like the golden pair. The golden pair is known as the affection relationship, and the affection relationship solves the problem of a lack of joy. Okay, so people in their life who have a lack of joy in their life, a lack of happiness, or really just joy, not really necessarily happiness, but joy specifically. And for the sake of this episode, I'm going to go so far as to actually define what joy actually is according to dictionary.com. So let's put it in. Quote, an emotion of great delight or happiness, okay, caused by something exceptionally good or satisfying, keen pleasure, elation, or a source or cause of keen pleasure or delight, something or someone greatly valued or appreciated, or the expression or display of a glad feeling, festive gaiety, or a state of happiness or felicity, to feel joy, to be glad, or to rejoice, etc. So people in life who lack joy oftentimes end up seeking out the affection relationship, also known as the golden pair. The golden pair itself is the highest compatibility in terms of sexual compatibility and emotional compatibility of all of the 8 sexually compatible relationships on paper. Now, that does not necessarily mean it is the absolute best relationship. Many people, especially within the ego hacker community, assume that the golden pair is absolutely the de facto standard, the absolute best relationship that is available. And that's not necessarily true. It's really not necessarily true because, remember, within the 8 sexual compatible relationships, each of those relationships ends up solving a particular problem, a different problem throughout somebody's life. Like, for example, the intrigue relationship solves the problem of boredom, right? The companion relationship solves the problem of loneliness. So there's different problems that people encounter in their life, and these problems can be solved by having these different kinds of relationships based on a person's nurture, what they've been through in their life. Even their octagram kind of definitely influences it in certain areas as well, depending on what variant of the 16 types that they actually are, right? So UDUF, as an atypical, it's pretty rare. It's just as rare as an SDSF. So I'm a UDUF ENTP. So Andrew Tate, he's also UDUF ENTP. I guess that's why a lot of people compare me to him and him to me, etc. And then there's also like SDSF ENTPs, like Logan Paul. He's an SDSF ENTP out there. So just then you compare him to myself, a UDUF ENTP. And it's funny, apparently Andrew Tate, who's UDUF ENTP, is going to be going up against Jake Paul, Logan Paul's brother. So that'll be very, very fascinating situation as a result. But the point is that golden pairs, it's the relationship with the highest highs, the lowest lows. It's really easy to get into, but the golden pair is actually pretty hard to maintain. And that's why it ends up being known as the relationship of reconciliation. Like I said a couple of episodes ago, the relationship of reconciliation. This is the relationship where the chance of you having a breakup with this person is actually extremely high. However, the chances of you getting back together with the person is also extremely high. And this is probably the only relationship of the 8 sexual compatibilities, with the exception of maybe the natural pair, that if you were to break up with the person, that getting back together is probably a very good idea. And being that it is the relationship of reconciliation, once you do get back together with this person, you guys are not likely to break up ever again, basically. So it's a really, really big deal. And the reason for that is something known as the test of the demon, test of the inferior, where basically the battleground of Titans, and I don't think it's whatever the 4th battleground is, which I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but that's all in Season 18. Those particular battlegrounds is where these tests are fought, and that's ultimately what determines the beginning and the end, or the maintenance of the golden pair, in order to keep the golden pair relationship together. Now, however, when it comes to the octagram has an interesting effect on the golden pair. And like I said in the previous episode, where I discussed the octagram a little bit in terms of the golden pair, it's that the octagram really determines what each person in a relationship, any of the 8 sexual compatible relationships, in terms of what they're looking for out of life, and ultimately what they're looking for from each other within a relationship. Remember, everyone's looking for their cognitive origin, and there's 8 cognitive origins, and each person has 2 cognitive origins that they're primarily looking for, one of which is their main origin, and then the other one is their secondary origin. But from an octagram perspective, regardless of primary, secondary origins, it really doesn't matter. Me being a UDUF, ENTP means that I'm hungrier for reverence than I am hungrier for satisfaction. Satisfaction is not as important to my nurture as reverence is, and being shown respect, and me showing respect to other people. That deep reverence as a UDUF type is super important. Now, if I was going to get with an INTJ woman who is also UDUF, for example, how that would work out is it would work out great, because she's looking for 2 parts of satisfaction while being 1 part of reverence. And some of the reasons why golden pairs end up failing is because of incompatible octagrams. And I would say that if your octagram is actually compatible on top of your golden pair compatibility, as is your innate compatibility, if everything is compatible there's actually a really good chance that you won't have that breakup and that you won't have that reconciliation. But the chance of that is extremely low. It's extremely low. And it's even lower if you're an intuitive type like myself and INTJ. It's extremely rare for intuitives to have the opportunity to actually get into a golden pair. It's statistically very unlikely. And that's why oftentimes intuitives end up in natural pairs over golden pairs, and sensing types end up in golden pairs more so than natural pairs as a result. Because with sensors, their golden pair is way more accessible, it's way more common. Whereas with intuitive, it just isn't. It's just not really that common. It's extremely rare as a result. So there's some difficulty there. But when you're an intuitive, for example, and you're in a golden pair, let's another one. Let's look at the ENTJ and the INTP, for example. And let's say the ENTJ was UDUF. Basically, the ENTJ would be all about exploration. It'd be all about discovery, more so than it would be about purpose. But if they were with an INTP that had any other octagram, there would be competition basically for those, because if the INTP was not also UDUF, there would be competition for that same discovery, and that would actually lead to the breakdown of the relationship. And now, granted, your focus can change, and you can adapt to new paradigms even on a daily basis. Like if you get a new job, boom, your focus could change straight away. It's super quick. I used to think it would take a long ass time for your cognitive focus to change. Actually, it can change pretty quick. It's your development that just doesn't change because it's really ingrained to you as a person. But yeah, just understand though, when you're in a golden pair, you really do want someone with the identical octagram as you, and it's the only type of time that you would have that. Now, if you're a natural pair, you'd want someone with the complete opposite octagram of you. But again, this is how it affects atypicals. Now, as far as typical octagrams, that's different, and we're still mapping that out. It's just that the majority of us on the team and who would do the research and also the field work when it comes to researching the science and all the discoveries that we've been able to make with it, most of us are actually atypicals. And so as a result, there's kind of a bias over like how we're conducting the research, because we're discovering these things for ourselves first before we can really actually look at others and observe others. So we're doing a lot of self-observations before we can start mapping out the typicals typically. So with that, just understand like UDUF being UDUF, as far as a golden pair goes, you want it to be the same. If you are UDUF and you want to get into a relationship with a golden pair, it's best to be in with another UDUF for your golden pair. That way your guys' cognitive origins are not going to be a problem, and you're not going to be competing for the same origin, and that way there's enough room for you to be yourselves within the relationship. And usually it's the golden pair that ends up breaking apart and leading to becoming known as the relationship of reconciliation. Basically, you have your breakup, but then you get back together. Those breakups usually happen because of competing for the same cognitive origins, basically, according to your human nurture, according to your octagram. So in order to prevent that, just kind of be aware that knowing your golden pair's octagram ahead of time and how that could potentially lead to various conflict, and you can be on top of it and manage it appropriately in order to prevent that breakup, it would actually be a very wise thing to do. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.